Pro Football Focus has graded LSU's win over Western Kentucky. We've got what you need to know. Locked on LSU. Here we go.
You are Locked On LSU, your daily podcast on the LSU Tigers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Okay, let's get it. It is Locked on LSU, your team every day. I'm your host, Matt Moscona. Thanks so much for making this your first listen. We're free, available wherever you get podcasts, of course, on YouTube as well. So please subscribe. And as always, one of the fastest ways to help us grow is by leaving your comments below. So thank you sincerely for that. And thank you for helping make the Locked On Podcast Network the #1 sports podcast network in the world. Today's episode is brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Okay, every week after LSU plays football, we dive deep into what the folks over at Pro Football Focus had to say, and we give you a rundown. As we always give you the caveat. I know many of you love that I say this every week. Pro Football Focus is a metric. It's not the metric. It's just something to consider. Sometimes it confirms or disconfirms what your eye test saw. It's just a metric to watch. And I always like to go offense and defense. And when you look at a game that finishes 13-10, where your offense scored one touchdown and gave up a touchdown, the defense did not allow a touchdown, you might guess that the defense would be highly rated and the offense would not be. And you would be guessing right. That is exactly how this transpired. If you look overall at the top 5 players, either side of the ball, the top 5 are all defense. Jakeem Jackson, Dashawn Spears, DJ Pickett, Harold Perkins, Jamari Butler. The lowest grades, all offense. Chris Hilton, Michael Van Buren, Ori Williams, Barry and Brown, Kyle Parker. We'll dive into all of it, what it means, what they said, and what we might be able to extrapolate from it. So let's start on the offensive side. And listen, we have throughout this year talked plenty about this LSU offensive line and how much it has struggled. That is not subjective. That is not an opinion. That is objective fact. This offensive line has just struggled so mightily. Now, your 2 transfers, Braylon Moore at center, Josh Thompson at right guard, have been your 2 most consistent performers all year. Everything else has been a bit of a revolving door and a challenge. And some of that's been injuries like Tyree Adams being out. Some of that has been young players like Carius Curne getting more run of late, or Weston Davis and Cohen Eccles getting their first extensive action as a redshirt freshman. Well, we have pointed out here week after week after week when they've struggled. And it is appropriate that today we start with their successes. Because offensively, the top graded player on LSU's offense, on a bad day, albeit, and not an eye-popping grade, but the highest graded player from LSU offensively was right tackle Weston Davis. He graded out at a 69.6 with a pass blocking grade of 85.6. Now, before this game, in his overall grade of a 69.6, the highest grade that Weston Davis had all season prior was last week against Arkansas at a 56. He had a 51.4 against Vanderbilt, a 53.6 against Southeastern, a 50.3 against Louisiana Tech. Understand, when you played the lesser competition is when he's been serviceable. But Weston Davis was your not your highest graded lineman, your highest graded offensive player. And a big part of that was his pass blocking grade at an 85.6. So hat tip to Weston Davis. Your second highest graded offensive player was Carius Curne. Your true freshman left tackle who played 72 snaps, graded out a 68.2. His pass blocking grade, 70.8. Run blocking grade, 65.6. Was not penalized in this ball game and was very consistent. So congrats to those 2 guys, your tackles, who have been much maligned to very poor spots, but played very well individually in this game against Western Kentucky. Bowersharp was 3, Cohen Eccles was 4, then Harlem Berry was 5. Those were your top 5 highest graded offensive linemen, or I'm sorry, overall players offensively. Your bottom 5, as we reference, Chris Hilton in his 22 snaps was your lowest graded offensive player. Michael Van Buren was your next lowest graded offensive player. We'll get to that in a second. Ori Williams, who only played 18 snaps, unfortunately, went down with an ankle injury. Berrien Brown, Kyle Parker, that's the bottom up, your bottom five. I tell you all the time that when I look at this chart, I look, it's a color-coded chart, right? The dark blues are closer to 100. And so that's your best grades. And then it goes dark blue to like lighter blue to dark green to lighter green, then like to light yellow. And then as it gets worse, it gets dark from light yellow to dark yellow to orange to red. So I look, where are my dark blues and where are my reds, basically? Where was the really, really good? Where was the really, really bad? Well, there's two dark blues. Josh Thompson, again, I mentioned, been one of your most consistent offensive linemen all year. His pass blocking grade was an 87.6. Weston Davis pass blocking grade an 85.6. Also, by the way, DJ Chester's pass blocking grade an 84.6. Hat tip to DJ Chester. After Braylon Moore went out after just 3 snaps, Chester played the entire game at center, played 79 snaps at center, and graded out with his pass blocking grade as an 84.6. So your linemen kind of led the way for you in their pass protection. They did not give up a sack in this ball game, which was great. Only 4 pressures on the entire game as well. 2 hurries, 2 quarterback hits. So your offensive line kept Michael Van Buren upright. Now, I always say I would look for the red. What was the bad? Well, Braylon Moore, his pass blocking grade was a 5. He only played 3 snaps. It's incomplete. And then Juwan Johnson, his pass block grade was a 22. His passing grade was a 31.9. So for whatever that's worth. Michael Van Buren is the other part of this that needs to be discussed because he was your second lowest graded player on the offensive side with a 50.7. Now, he threw an interception, which obviously was a big part of this. And the disappointing thing for Van Buren in this game in particular is playing a lesser opponent. You would have assumed this was his opportunity to get going offensively. A week ago, you were playing Arkansas, which is statistically the worst defense in the SEC. So the hope was the offense with Van Buren would have found a different gear. That didn't happen against Arkansas. You scored only 23 points. Well, this was an opportunity, maybe a big progression from start 1 to start 2, especially being at home and facing a G5 opponent that's 108th in the country against the run. This felt like it was an opportunity to put up big numbers, and it just didn't happen. Van Buren threw 42 passes. He completed just 60% of those throws for 202 yards, a touchdown, an interception. He was not credited with a single big-time throw in the game against Western Kentucky. And that's what's so disappointing because this really felt like it was an opportunity for Van Buren to really get going against that Western Kentucky defense. And when you look at the deep balls, and that's the thing everybody has said, will they stretch the field? Well, they threw 3 passes on the day that went beyond 20 yards. He didn't complete any of them. 0 for 1 deep left, 0 for 2 deep middle. He did not attempt to pass beyond 20 yards deep right. And as I look at it here, I'm looking at the passing chart. This was another instance where the only reason he completed 60% of his passes was because of the screens. When you look at plays at or behind the line of scrimmage and inside of 10 yards, let's see, 5, 9, 11, 22, 23 passes were from 0 to 10 yards was 11. And 12 were at or behind the line of scrimmage. So everything Van Buren did really was what we've seen so far from this team. It was screens. It was getting the ball out quickly. And it was just an ineffective day, as it has been throughout the course of this season. So, the point that I would make is the point that I've made all along. I know there were a lot of people who thought that Garrett Nussmeier was the problem with this offense. The point that I've made over and over again is Nussmeier wasn't perfect. He certainly was a problem, but he wasn't the core issue. Your offensive line, your inability to run, play calling, an injured quarterback, whatever, receivers dropping passes, all of those things factor into why this offense has been so dysfunctional throughout the course of the year. And unfortunately, you saw it again Saturday against Western Kentucky. Now, what you also saw Saturday against Western Kentucky was an incredible defensive performance by the Tigers. And we'll dive into that as we continue. It's Locked on LSU, your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by Wayfair. The holiday season is right around the corner, and that means it's time to get your home ready. Whether you need more seating for guests, cozy new linens, or fun serveware for holiday hosting, Wayfair's Black Friday sale is here to help you make your space shine. And the best part, you don't have to wait. Wayfair's Black Friday deals are happening all month long with up to 70% off everything from sofas to spatulas. Recently, we bought our outdoor patio furniture. We upgraded our outdoor bar stools in our outdoor kitchen. We got them the all-weather bar stools from Wayfair. You should get your new items at Wayfair as well. Don't miss out on early Black Friday deals. Head to wayfair.com now to shop Wayfair's Black Friday sale for up to 70% off. That's WAYFAIR.com. Sale ends December the 7th. As we look at the defensive side of the ball, clearly a much better day for LSU's defense than for the LSU offense, as the Tiger defense allowed just a field goal on the opening possession of the game and nothing after that. The only other points that Western Kentucky got were a defensive scoop and score on a Harlem Berry fumble late in the ball game with just over a minute to play. Your highest graded defender was Jakeem Jackson, and I love to see that, man. Jakeem Jackson has just not had many opportunities this year. His grade was an 80.5. Coverage grade was an 80. He played 21 snaps. Now, Mansour Delane did not play in this ball game. He had an abdominal injury, and as I was told, that's very much a thing where you have a guy with such a high ceiling and a great future, and this is a lost season, and you're playing Western Kentucky, and it was an opportunity just to let him rest. Hopefully to be back next week when you play Oklahoma and you're not risking further injury before the combine and pro day and all the things that are going to happen for Delane. So Jackson took advantage with 21 snaps and 80 in coverage, had a couple of tackles. He did force an incompletion as well, which was great to see. We haven't seen a ton snap-wise of Dashawn Spears this year. He's largely been your dime back. So when you go to a sixth defensive back, but when Spears has had his opportunity, he's been awesome. And he was again on Saturday. 27 snaps for Dashawn Spears. He had a couple of tackles. He was targeted 5 times, allowed just 1 catch in those 5 targets. Also forced an incompletion. It was sort of a theme of DBU. Jackson, Spears, your third highest graded defender was DJ Pickett, who in his freshman season has really emerged. He had an interception. He had a sack in the ball game as well. You know, DJ Pickett was 5-star number 1 cornerback in the country, with Mansour Delane leaving for the NFL draft. We're assuming he's leaving for the NFL draft. Pickett, PJ Woodland, likely your starting corner tandem next year. You could always bring in someone via the portal, but for the new coaching staff, it will be paramount that they keep DJ Pickett in the fold and don't let him hit the transfer portal. That means a giant part of that is going to make sure that you keep Corey Raymond as part of this staff. Well, after Pickett, Harold Perkins and then Jamari Butler playing their final games in Tiger Stadium were 4th and 5th in the top 5 defensively. Perkins was great. He was injured, had a hip pointer, returned in the ball game as well. 3 tackles allowed. Let's see, he was targeted 4 times in coverage, just 12 yards on those receptions. His tackling grade, a 78.6. So a really nice day for Harold Perkins, especially when you consider this is a guy who many of us thought coming in as a 5-star and the way he exploded as a freshman would be 3 years into the NFL. Unfortunately, of course, struggled to find his position. Last year had the torn ACL, battled back, came back in his 4th season. He does have the redshirt year from a year ago because he only played in 4 games. So he could, by rule, come back for another season. Perkins participated in senior day. It's hard to imagine he'd come back for a 5th season. Where does he fall in the NFL draft? That remains to be seen, but it was nice to see Perkins wrap up his career in Tiger Stadium with a really nice day. When you go to the bottom, and there wasn't a lot of bad, Tylen Singleton played 12 snaps. He was your lowest graded defender. Dylan Carpenter, Jacobian Guillory, Buddy Mathis, PJ Woodland. That's your bottom. I tell you, look for the Reds and the Blues. The only blue was Tamarcus Cooley. His tackling grade was an 82, so that was the only one over 80. But, man, everybody just was really steady and consistent in this ball game among the 24 players that played defensive snaps for LSU in this game against Western Kentucky on Saturday night in Tiger Stadium. So that was fantastic to see. For what it's worth, mentioned that West Weeks, Whit Weeks, and Zach Weeks all got on the field at the same time. That's the first time in LSU history that three brothers played in the same game. Well, West on his senior night started at middle linebacker, played 61 snaps. Whit played just 14 snaps in the game, 5 in run defense, 1 as a pass rusher, 8 coverage snaps. Western Kentucky, of course, threw it around a bunch. And Whit graded out at a 64. But how about Zach? Whit's grade was a 64.3. Zach Weeks, only 6 defensive snaps, graded out a 65.0. So Zach Weeks only played 6 snaps, but Zach Weeks was the highest graded among the Weeks brothers from Pro Football Focus. So fantastic to see the day that those guys had, getting to play together and make some history for LSU football, which been playing football since 1893. If you do something that's never been done before, that's significant. 3 brothers on the field at the same time was significant. Also had tip to Jamari Butler. A couple of sacks, had 20 pass rush snaps. So congrats to Jamari Butler, his final game as a Tiger as well. The 6th year, the graduate coming in from Nebraska, playing a really strong game in his final game as an LSU Tiger in Tiger Stadium. So now LSU will get on the road to Norman, Oklahoma after Thanksgiving to take on Oklahoma, the Sooners in Norman on Saturday, the regular season finale, as LSU wraps up its regular season and the Sooners play for a playoff berth. The early point spread is out in that game. I'll give you a thought on it when we wrap up Locked on LSU, your team every day. College football is back, and I couldn't be more excited. The tailgates, the rivalries, the energy in the stands, there's just nothing like it. But let's be real. Actually getting tickets can feel like more of a battle than the game itself. Endless queues, hidden fees, prices jumping at checkout. That's why I use Gametime, the app that gives the advantage back to the fans. It's the easiest way to score last-minute tickets at the best prices with no surprise fees. What you see is what you pay. I pulled up Gametime, and in just a couple of taps, I saw amazing deals. I'm talking about your favorite college football games as low as $25. And I love the zone deals too. You pick the section, Gametime picks the seats, and you save big. So take the guesswork out of buying college football tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, that's promo code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE for $20 off. Swipe, tap, ticket, go. Download Gametime today. Wrapping up another edition of the Locked On LSU podcast, where again, we thank you so much for helping make the Locked On Podcast Network the #1 sports podcast network in the world. And we're available on the Gulf Coast Sports and Entertainment Network as well. So thanks to everyone who joins us every Monday through Friday on the Gulf Coast Sports and Entertainment Network. The Tigers hit the road for the final game of the 2025 regular season. It'll be the final game for Frank Wilson as LSU's interim head coach, and very likely his last game as LSU's head coach, as so much of the attention, of course, is turned to Lane Kiffin and Kiffin Watch and what all may transpire there. And we'll see if Frank is, in fact, retained as a member of the next coach's staff, which would stand to reason would be very obvious when you're talking about a guy who kept not only this roster, but the recruiting class together as well. It would make so much sense for Frank Wilson to be a part of the next coach's full-time staff, but all that will be determined in time. In the meantime, LSU is going to have an interesting week because they do have Thanksgiving on Thursday. A lot of the normal media availability changes this week. There is the Monday press conference, but no Wednesday SEC coaches teleconference. And then typically Thursday after practice, there's media availability. There is none this week, being that it's Thanksgiving. So Tigers will travel on Black Friday to Norman, and then they'll play Saturday against the Sooners. And the Tigers are a 10-point underdog on the opening line in Norman. So a double-digit road underdog. And if I'm being completely honest, I'm a little surprised that number isn't even higher than 10. because when you look at the dynamics of this game, Oklahoma has everything to play for, and LSU has nothing to play for. Now, the LSU defense has continued to be absolutely outstanding throughout the course of this season, even amid all the struggles offensively. The Tigers are 16th in the country in scoring defense at 18.5 points per game. As a matter of fact, I didn't get much right with this football team, but my one bold prediction before the season was that for the first time since 2017, LSU would finish top 20 in the country in scoring defense. And it looks like that's going to happen here as the Tigers are 16th right now. Hopefully it's not an avalanche of points for the Sooners that knocks LSU out of that position. But it is indicative of how this team has been. So it's a 10 to 10.5 point line where Oklahoma is favored. And that makes sense. Look, LSU in a lost season is going on the road to Norman. First time LSU will play in Norman against the Sooners, whereas OU played in Baton Rouge a year ago. And LSU playing for nothing while Oklahoma is playing for everything. At 9-2, if Oklahoma, which beat Alabama and Missouri in the last 2 weeks, and is a win at Tennessee as well, if Oklahoma beats LSU on Saturday, they're 10-2. They're not going to go to the SEC championship game. But that 10-2 should be plenty enough to get Oklahoma in the college football playoff. So they are a supremely motivated team with everything to play for. And LSU is on the opposite side of that. It's interesting because A&M, Georgia, Ole Miss, Alabama, and Texas are all in the standings higher than Oklahoma right now. The Sooners are sixth, but it's the overall record with Texas at 8-3 now and OU at 9-2 that could potentially shift that. Would hate to think that a loss by Texas against Ohio State on the road in week 1 is the thing that would keep them out, because it would certainly disincentivize teams from playing those big games. But then again, Texas also has to beat Texas A&M this week. In the game is in Austin, so it's a challenge for Texas A&M going on the road to play in Austin. But if A&M does in fact beat Texas, then this conversation becomes much easier because Texas would have its 4th loss, and there's no longer a conversation. But for Oklahoma, remember the big story is John Mateer. John Mateer, the quarterback they got from Washington State, came down with his offensive coordinator from Washington State, Ben Arbuckle, and they started this season absolutely en fuego. They were one of the real great stories of the early college football season. And, they beat Michigan in week 2. They beat Auburn, and they had started 5-0, and the offense was really good until we saw John Mateer get hurt, broke a bone in his hand, tried to come back too soon. They were ineffective offensively against Texas, losing 23-6. And since then, it's just been a little bit of a slow climb. They won at South Carolina. They lost at home against Ole Miss in a close game, but now they've won 3 in a row. They won at number 14, Tennessee, at number 4, Alabama, and then at home against number 22, Missouri. So 3 straight ranked wins, 2 of them on the road, has Oklahoma very much back in the thick of things for the college football playoff. So an Oklahoma team playing for a ton, an LSU team not playing for much. You would think all the motivation would be on OU. Now, this is a very quarterback-centric offense, but John Mateer has been less than 100%. Now, he's been looking better-ish than the 6 points they scored against Texas, but 26 against South Carolina, 26 in the loss to Ole Miss. They scored 33 against Tennessee on the road, and it's a bad Tennessee secondary because of all their injuries. Then just 23 points against Alabama and 17 against Missouri. So this is one of those games where Oklahoma, much better team than LSU, but that offense behind Mateer, who has not looked healthy, especially since returning from the hand injury, that's an Oklahoma offense that might struggle with this LSU defense, similar to when you went on the road against Alabama, and really can help control the tempo of that game, allowing just 20 points on the road to Alabama. And really it was just a disappointing sequence at the end of the first half that sort of changed the shape of that entire game. The challenge, they're not very good on the offensive line. They're average there. They don't have necessarily dynamic playmaking wide receivers like future first-round picks, but they are exceptional defensively. R. Mason Thomas, provided he plays, I was told by one LSU staff member he will be the best edge that LSU plays all year. And when you look at the struggles LSU has had protecting their quarterback, that is a real big concern. They run a 4-2-5 base, and Brent Venables is a great defensive coordinator. Listen, he's the head coach, and as long as he's the head coach and you have an elite defensive mind like that as the head coach, you have to figure Oklahoma is always going to be good defensively. And they're good up front in their defensive front seven. They blitz on about 50% of their defensive snaps. And, you know, they're pretty good on special teams as well. Their place kicker has made all 7 attempts this year from 50 plus. So something else to consider, that if you do get into a situation where where they're lining up for a long field goal, they have no problem lining up and trusting their kicker with a long field goal because he's rewarded that trust throughout the course of this season. So Oklahoma has been one of the pleasant surprises across college football this year, and LSU has their hands full going to Norman to try to steal a win. I'll remind you, a year ago, Oklahoma, which was so anemic offensively, had a breakout game by Jackson Arnold and an elite defensive game and beat Alabama in Norman late last season. Maybe that's something LSU could try to turn that trick this time against the Sooners. We'll see on Saturday. We'll be counting you down to that game all week right here on the Locked On LSU podcast. Hey, thanks so much for making it your first listen. Please subscribe on your favorite podcast app. Rate us, leave a review. If you're on YouTube, smash the like button, subscribe to the channel, hit the bell so you're notified whenever we post a new video, and let a friend know that if they love the Tigers, we got you here every single day for Locked On LSU. It's your team every day.